Hi, my name is Sophia Thomas and this is my partner Alex. And we wanted to do an investigation to figure out what really caused the housing bubble and who was really responsible for the 2008 global recession. So we split up and did a couple of interviews. Now these testimonies range from presidents to homeowners, and I'll spare you the details, it gets pretty messy. Welcome, Mr. President. Thank you for joining us today.
That's former president. My glory days are over. I'm just like you.
Okay, so we're doing an investigation on what and who really caused the 2008 global recession. Is it okay if we ask you a few questions?
Well, sure. I assume that's why you brought me in here. Go right ahead, though I don't know how much I have to do with it.
Is it true that throughout your 2 terms you used bully pulpit and encouraged Americans to buy more homes rather than rent because it went hand in hand with the American dream?
Well, yes? Because it does. Higher homeownership brings many other positive effects, like better education, a higher graduation rate, and it lowers crime.
Yes, but at the same time you lowered taxes on the wealthy, you didn't invest in the middle class. This caused a massive spike in income inequality for the middle class. Therefore, to buy houses, to achieve the American dream, they needed more loans and borrowed more money.
Well, yes, that happened, but I've always cared about the middle class. I'm from the middle class. It's just that, poor people make poor decisions.
Poor decisions they were forced to make due to the way that you oversaw tax regulations?
I evoke the fifth.
Okay, that's okay. We can move on. So is it true that after the recession, you offered relief to Wall Street, banks, large companies, but not to homeowners?
I mean, not entirely, but sure, from a certain perspective.
Is it also true that Wall Street donated a lot of money for your campaigns? Would you say that your help to them would be biased?
Well, yes and no.
So, by doing so, it seems that you had very little interest in even remotely helping the middle-class homeowners at all. The way you handled the aftermath of the recession was in favor of you and people who directly helped you. Would you agree with this statement?
No, I would disagree. I've appointed many smart men who are capable of making the right decision for this country.
Appointed smart men, like Ben Bernanke and other lobbyists with a strong self-interest. He has stated, along with former President Clinton, that you are to blame for a majority of the recession.
Okay, Ben was never a fan of mine, and Clinton probably wouldn't even be able to tell you what day of the week it is. I trust Alan Greenspan and Bernanke, even though we don't get along well, as chairman of the Federal Reserve. I am not to blame for this because it was in the hands of the Federal Reserve and American banks.
Well, would you mind giving us a couple of your trusted contacts, then?
Of course. I awarded Alan Greenspan with the Medal of Freedom, so I trust his words completely. I'm sure he can help you figure out this mess.
Could you please state your name for the camera?
Alan Greenspan.
How did you come into your position?
I was appointed by Reagan as chairman of the Federal Reserve August 11th, 1987.
Is it true that several times you took the initiative and cut interest rates as a way to cushion the market, like after the Asian financial crisis and after 9/11?
Yes, and it worked. Our economy was impacted much less. I did this so it wouldn't fluctuate as much.
It did work, yes. But why did you keep them low?
I beg your pardon?
During the Asian financial crisis, when economies in Asia were suffering, you acted quickly to lower interest rates so the impact on the U.S. would be significantly less, and it worked. After these economies recovered, you followed with a series of interest hikes, leading through 1999, to balance out what you had done. But after 9/11, you again lowered interest rates for cushion, though you kept interest rates extremely low.
I've been in this position for almost 20 years, and I've kept the U.S. economy more stable than it's ever been. I've been awarded the Legion of Honor, the Medal of Freedom, deemed an honorary knight of the British Empire because of my work, and I have done a fantastic job.
How would you describe your economic stance?
Well, I don't know how to answer that. I guess be and let be stance?
So, would it be safe to assume that you believe in laissez-faire capitalism?
I do, yes. I believe that free markets are the only way that markets can succeed.
So, if you believe that the only way to succeed is to let businesses fall and rise with the market, then why would you bail out failing institutions? Does this not go against what laissez-faire capitalism means? Why wouldn't you just let the market run its course, Dr. Greenspan?
Well, it's under my jurisdiction to oversee the economy, and if these companies need help, I give them help.
But help doesn't mean fully bail. It says here that you were told numerous times that for years what you were doing was wrong and would create chaos. Why didn't you heed these warnings?
I did, to an extent.
The housing bubble ended up expanding to almost $8 trillion. If this crashed, we would be $8 trillion more in debt. Did you really think the US market could take a hit like that?
Well, you can't blame me for the crash. I retired. Ask Ben Bernanke. He was in charge when that happened. Yes, it's true that I took Greenspan's job after he retired in January 2006. Because Dr. Greenspan retired before anyone could fire him, he still gets about $160,000 in pension every year, and did, even then, during the housing crisis.
He points to you being the reason the housing market exploded in the first place. Do you have anything to say on that?
I do, yes. Firstly, it wasn't my fault. He was the one who went off the rails trying to keep the market at an extended high. Everyone left and right awarded him, thanking him for keeping the economy so stable. Stable my...
Well, if you disagree with his decisions so much, why did you continue doing the same thing that he did?
Excuse me? I wouldn't do anything like that.
Well, you did. You increased the money supply by trillions of dollars. Anyone with common knowledge would know that if there's a problem with the market, you can't just print more money. Dr. Greenspan oversaw the collection of almost $8 trillion of debt, so your solution was just to print more money, thinking the debt would go away?
No, I never said that. I did this because I oversaw the central banks and their response to the crisis. There was an increasing problem with interest rates. What I actually did was lower the cost of lending money from bank to bank, therefore lowering the interest rate for loans to consumers and businesses. This helped lower the unemployment rate by a lot. And I didn't just print more money. I oversaw the purchasing of mortgage-backed securities. By purchasing these securities on a large scale, the demand increased for them, which led for an increase in the prices.
This causes lower interest rates and higher prices, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes, but you lowered the interest rates to near zero. You also bailed out institutions very often. So often, in fact, that it says that many companies had an extreme increase in risky bets. Is it safe to say that these companies took these risky bets because they knew that they wouldn't lose and you would bail them out?
Okay, listen. I did this only when companies whose huge liability was isolated in its financial products. I was dealing with hundreds of billions of dollars, so JP Morgan and Bank of America purchased them to save the losses.
Also, it says here that by using extraordinary monetary policy measures, you practically destroyed any free markets, as well as harming stocks, bonds, interest rates, and other financial assets. Is this true? If so, why would you knowingly destroy everything you claim to support?
Get out of my house. I'm serious. Get the out. Who do you think you are?
Hello, welcome. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions, but first I need a little clarification. It says here that you've given out hundreds of AAA ratings?
Me? I did nothing of the sort. Yeah, I mean, AAA, might as well. That's not me. That's not me.
We know it's you, so we just need to know why. In the video, it clearly shows you walking around a highest B rating establishment, clearly not up to par, and giving it a AAA rating. This is one of many establishments you did this with. Why would you do this?
Okay, well, because I needed more good ratings.
But why? Isn't it your job to make sure that you're giving accurate ratings?
That's a loaded question.
You knew that by handing out these high ratings, you'd be lying. Is this not an extreme moral hazard? Why would you not do your job correctly on purpose? You knew these were extremely inaccurate ratings, and yet you continued to give these out for...
Listen to me. Listen to me very closely. I had to, okay? I had to give out good ratings. Otherwise, I wouldn't be paid. I had to make profit somehow. I mean, of course I knew it was wrong, but how else would I have made money? They practically had me in a chokehold.
They?
What? I don't know what you're talking about.
You said that they had you in a chokehold. Who is the they that you're referring to?
You know, the big guys. Wall Street.
I'm here to represent the Wall Street banks. We've done this before, unfortunately.
Okay then, I guess we'll skip the formalities then. What role did you have in the accounting scandal that FNMA and Freddie Mac caught themselves in?
We had nothing to do with their scandal. Wall Street just happened to be there to pick up the slack when they were removed from the lead role in the mortgage market.
When Wall Street took over the mortgage market, did they put any strict rules in place for issuing new loans?
Depends on your version of strict, but I'm assuming the answer to your question is no.
How did everything go south for Wall Street so quickly? With the amount of money Wall Street bankers were making from issuing mortgage-backed bonds, you'd think everything was going well.
It was going well. The downfall was mostly because of the politicians and regulators allowing Wall Street bankers to allow them to use leverage to make more money. Then, when the Lehman Brothers collapsed, it caused everything else to collapse as well because of the banks being linked together through loans and security.
Okay. Thank you for coming in on such a short notice. You represent the mortgage companies and brokers, is that correct?
That would be correct.
Excellent. First question. What regulations did you have in place for your brokers along with the ethical training to handle the influx of people asking for loans?
To be completely upfront about all this, we had no regulations in place for our brokers or ethical training. The mortgage company's brokers did go to less credible people in order to get commission money, despite the fact that many of the people who were given loans would not be able to pay it back.
Do you have examples of the type of loans that mortgage companies would give?
Yes. They created and pushed more exotic loans like the LIR loans, NINJA loans, no doc loans, no income variation loans, and pay option adjustable rates negative enumeration subprimes, though about 65% of them were subprime mortgages.
Thank you for being so upfront about most of this. I have one last question. The mortgage brokers, the people that mortgage companies would hire, did they have the training to handle all this?
No. In fact, most of them were untrained, and a good few were actually pizza guys, but mortgage companies needed them to handle the huge rise in people trying to get loans because of the politicians promoting it.
Hello, thank you for your time today. You are here representing the congressman who worked during and had a hand in the housing crisis in '08, is that correct?
That would be accurate.
Great. Let's get right to it then. Congressmen are in charge of being the voice of the people. Am I on track?
That is what they are instated there to be.
And throughout history, they've been known to use their position of authority to provide themselves with the opportunity to speak out on any issue.
Most people call it a bully pulpit, but yes, they do, when they think the cause is right.
Then what caused them to think it was right to use their bully pulpit to promote home ownership, especially for those who couldn't afford it?
I believe that the people I represent use their platform to condemn the firms that caused the crash.
Did they not do that after passing laws and pushing for regulations that force banks to give loans to economically disadvantaged people who may not have had the credibility? And while using their platform to condemn the firms, did a large number of congressmen also take campaign contributions from the firms they were accusing?
Some congressmen did that. A good number of them were also in charge of the rescue, the bailouts, and the new regulations after the crisis. Besides, not all the laws and regulations that were passed forced the banks to give out loans. A bunch of big commercial banks did that on their own.
We're going to cut right to the chase here. You represent the big commercial banks. Can you please list exactly which ones you represent?
JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, and the Bank of America for the most part.
Did any of these banks feel pressure from the government to give out loans to people that may not have had the credit?
Yes, many of the laws and regulations that the government passed forced the big banks to give out those loans.
Did the banks and the people who work in them not gain money as a result of these loans that were forced on them?
No. After the housing bubble burst, the banks lost a lot of money, and many of them were also nationalized by the government or merged with other financial institutions.
So the bankers repaid the big bonuses that they gave themselves when things were going well.
No.
It says here that you convinced the government that banks were too big to fail. But how did the big banks get their money back?
What I am at liberty to say is that the big banks were given money by the government and by extension, taxpayers. Look, I don't know what's going on here, but if my clients are in trouble, so should Wall Street. They're the ones with more power.
Okay, let's just get this over with. You represent the homeowners, and more specifically, the homeowners who took out mortgages.
Yep, that sounds right.
Great. Did your clients know that they were being taken advantage of when they got a mortgage or a loan to get a house?
Many of them were not aware of what the brokers were swindling them into, but the few that did had been manipulated into thinking that it was an easier way to the American dream.
So all the homeowners that took out loans were fairly harmless and didn't add to the crash?
Well, no, I didn't say that.
Because I saw something about homeowners that would use their homes as ATMs, refinancing and taking out money every year until the crash. Do you think that didn't add to the downfall of the market?
Well, yes, I'm sure it did, but it definitely didn't do as much as the bankers did when they gave out all those loans.
So what happened after the crash?
Most people were unable to repay their mortgage, and the housing prices declined, which caused many people to lose their homes and jobs. A large amount of homeowners had debt that was greater than the cost of their home.
Would you say that homeowners ended up with the most trouble when the housing bubble burst?
Yes, the homeowners did not get a payout from the government like most of the banks did. So as a result of that, it's taken many years to repair homeowner balance sheets.
So we've concluded that though it was years in the making, the collapse of the housing bubble was because of low interest rates, easy and available credit, scant regulation, and toxic mortgages. And that was basically the spark which ignited this full-blown crisis in the fall of 2008, which we know as the Great Recession.
And every time it rains, pennies from heaven.
Shooby-dooby,
Don't you know each cloud contains pennies from heaven?
shooby-dooby.
You'll find your fortune falling all over town. Be sure that your umbrella is upside down, and trade them for a package of sunshine and ravioli.
Macaroni,
If you want the things you love, you must have a pizza, baby. And when you hear thunder, don't run under a tree. There'll be pennies from heaven for you and me.